This happened around 10 years ago, give or take about a year. I just found out about this subreddit, and I thought that it was worth posting. My friend Craig and I made plans to go hang out with our friend Jeremy and his new girlfriend. Neither of us had to work the next day, so we grabbed some beers and made our way to Jeremy's mom's apartment complex, where Jer was temporarily staying. When we got there, we went out into the woods behind the apartment complex to drink. This wasn't just a little patch of trees, but a good-sized patch of forest. For context, this was in New York State. It was a nice fall day, late afternoon, and the sun was still out. We finished the beers and decided to go get more. So we go to the store to get some more beer and head back to the apartments and enter the woods. This was autumn, and the light outside was right at that stage where it starts to very quickly fade. We underestimated just how dark it would be once we were in the woods, and how fast the light was fading away. We planned on making a fire, but didn't really count on it being so dark when we got back. So we're walking into this sort of clearing area, from where we can choose to head off in a few different directions. We're having a good time, laughing, talking, but something not too far in the distance catches my eye. It's too dark to tell, but I swear that I can see a very large figure. No, it's too big. It's probably a tree or just your eyes messing with you. So, as Jeremy is gabbing in the background, I ask Craig as an aside if he can see something standing up ahead. And he's like, "Nah, where? Oh, wait, there. Oh, crap." We were still walking, and it was becoming clear that I wasn't seeing things. There was a very large person standing in the forest up ahead, apparently facing us. So I tried to get Jeremy's attention without cluing the big guy in that we've noticed him, just in case something sketchy is going on, which I get the serious feeling there is. We tell Jeremy that there's a person up ahead, but Jeremy is in a jovial, no-chill state, and he exclaims, "Holy crap, is that Bigfoot?" We humor him and laugh, but it's clear to Craig and I that this is actually creepy, and probably not a safe situation. And it's clear that Jeremy is not understanding that. It's hard to communicate the pacing of our approach onto the guy, but essentially we had gotten too close not to acknowledge him, partially because it took us a moment to get Jeremy's attention, and partially because we weren't trying to just turn around and run like we were scared. There were 4 of us, and 1 of him after all. But this was a big guy. Not supernaturally big or anything, and not like he was jacked or anything like that. Just a naturally gigantic dude. Very tall and heavy without being particularly fat. And he was just standing there, in the middle of the forest, in the dark, alone. So as we approach this guy and just sort of say hello, Jeremy, the absolute fool that he was, gets way too close into this guy's personal space as he enthusiastically tells him about how scary he looks, standing in the woods alone. "We thought you were an alien or something, bro. I thought you were gonna jump up and blah." Jeremy mimes an extra set of teeth coming out of his mouth like a xenomorph from the Alien vs. Predators movie, all up in this guy's face. To be clear, Jeremy is not trying to be intimidating, or a jerk in any way. He's trying to be friendly and joking around with the guy, but he is literally leaning into this dude and practically sticking his hands in his face, with his impression of an alien. Did I mention that Jeremy was kind of a moron? Jeremy was kind of a moron. Love you, Jeremy, but you were kind of a moron. And Jeremy's poor girlfriend, who was a few years younger than us and very shy, was clearly terrified, to which Jer was also oblivious. So, Craig and I are both standing here kind of trying to brainstorm a way out of the situation. Jeremy is clearly too dense to get it if we say that we have to go. He'd be like, "What? We just got here, aren't we having a fire?" and we were trying to seem confident and in control of the situation. The big guy says, "Oh, you guys are drinking. I got some drinks too." And he walks over to the tree line where he has a bag laying beside a tree. He reaches into the bag, and while he grabs a beer with one hand, he sneakily sort of pulls something else out with his other hand and places it into his hoodie pocket. I'm convinced that it was a knife or a gun. Probably a knife, in all honesty. He then reapproaches us and cracks open his beer. I glance around casually, and then I notice something else. Somebody else is out here. There's someone moving along the tree line to our left, a relatively good distance away, but somebody else is here, and they're circling around as if to come up behind us. Screw this. I need to leave now. So I go, "Well, I gotta work in the morning and Craig's driving me home, so we gotta get out of here." Jeremy, in his infinite wisdom, responds with, "What? You said you didn't have to work tomorrow." I facepalm so hard on the inside. "No, Jeremy, you must have misheard me. I said I do have to work tomorrow." And Jeremy, proving there is no end to his wisdom, says, "Alright guys, well, it was nice hanging out with you. Get home safe." He wasn't leaving the woods with us. Craig and I started walking away, and I told him about the other person circling to get behind us, and that we needed to move. We started trying to brainstorm a way to get Jeremy and his girlfriend out of there, and decided to call him and tell him that his mom was out in the parking lot looking for him. Jeremy is terrified of his mom. Craig explains to me, and this should work. Because we clearly couldn't just call him and tell him the situation was not safe without him blurting out, "Oh, this guy isn't sketchy, I totally feel safe." Jeremy was mad at us for lying about his mom. I think his girlfriend appreciated it, though. I'm not sure what was going on there that night. I've talked to several people about it over the years, and there are a few different ideas. Did they know we were coming back? Were they waiting for us? Or did we stumble into something that we weren't meant to? Almost everyone I tell about this says, "You guys just accidentally interrupted a drug deal." But something about that just doesn't seem right. Who does a drug deal in the middle of the woods at night? I don't know. Very possibly it was just a homeless dude with no ill intentions, and another homeless dude with no ill intentions as well. But it was a very creepy and scary situation, and I just thought I would share it. Back before the pandemic, I was let go from my normal 9 to 5, and this left me in a bit of a desperate state for money. My wife was still working, thankfully, but I knew that I needed to figure something out, and unemployment wasn't a guarantee. So I got a little desperate. That desperation led me to doing what a lot of other Americans did at that time, and I turned to the gig economy to try and pad our savings so that bills would get paid. It was a bit tough, but I did what I did and we made it work. For the most part, I was driving for a ride-share company. I tried to do the food delivery thing, but that didn't pay well enough, honestly, and I found that people were better tippers if you were delivering them to their destinations instead of delivering their overpriced sandwich. One night, I was on the clock and I had come off of a fare when I got a ping saying that there was another passenger nearby, and they needed a lift. It was on the outskirts of town, but I was kind of close, so I figured, whatever. I would get him, take him wherever, and then just go home. The passenger seemed normal enough. He was a young guy in what looked like his mid-20s, well enough dressed, and he seemed pretty friendly. He opened the door, we confirmed that he was my passenger, and he tossed his backpack into the back, and then sat in the rear passenger side seat. There were literally no red flags that I could see. He looked like a normal dude that you'd see working in IT for some medium-sized company. He buckled in and said, "Hey, thanks for picking me up. Sorry it's so late, though." I laughed and told him that it wasn't that big of a deal, that I would get him to his destination, and then probably head home for the night. As I drove, we struck up a bit of conversation. He told me that he was working as a contractor for a warehouse, doing system maintenance and whatnot, which wasn't surprising, as I mentioned. He said that he was saving up to go back to school so that he could get out of the contract work and get a full-time job doing tech work, because he was tired of the instability. I mentioned that I knew all about instability, as I'd been let go and we kind of bonded over blue-collar work and the annoyances that came with it. He seemed genuine, just another hard-working guy trying to make it. I think that's why I found myself relaxed during the whole ride, and any concern I had about him was immediately dispelled. Then we pulled down the road for his destination, and it was a part of town that I knew from my teenage years. Not the best place to be in the middle of the night. I made a remark that was a bit inappropriate, asking him if he was sure that he wanted me to drop him off down this way. He laughed and said, "Yeah, unfortunately." I shrugged and just kept on down the street until the map notified me that we were where we wanted to be dropped off, which looked like an absolute mess. The house was old, dilapidated, and while I'm not one that should judge people, did not look like a place where this man should be living, staying, or associating with. I pulled up to the curb under the only streetlight on that part of the strip, and that's where things took a bit of a turn. The guy hesitated and took a deep breath and then opened the door and said, "Hey, could you just wait for a second?" His voice was no longer friendly. It sounded almost scared as he asked, but before I could even respond, the front door of the house swung open. 3 men emerged, one of them very noticeably brandishing a gun. My heart skipped when I saw it, and it immediately clicked in my mind that this whole thing was a setup. I looked back at the man who was now half standing with my door open, looking back at me with that stare of, "I'm really sorry, dude," in his eyes. Panic surged through me. These guys were either going to rob me, steal my car, or worse. Without thinking, I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward and my tires squealed. I heard someone shout and then the loud bang, followed by more shouting and a few more shots ringing out. My mind was racing. I was pumped full of adrenaline, but I did not slow down. I did at one point look in my rearview mirror, which is when I noticed that the guy that was in the back seat was now lying on the ground a ways back, and the other 3 guys were standing over him. I kept going for a while, and then pulled into a Walmart parking lot before I felt safe enough to call the police. I explained what had happened to them, and told them where I was. The cops arrived pretty much right away, and that's when I had to explain the whole thing to them again. And that was also when I noticed that my car had a few new holes by the back door and in the side of the trunk. I told them that the guy was a fare, that I'd went to drop him off, and that the people just started shooting. I explained that the last thing I saw was him on the ground with the other guys, and I didn't know if he was alive, dead, or other. Worse yet, his backpack was still in the back seat. And when the cops opened it, they found a handgun. So much to my disdain, this guy was also armed, and he was sitting in the prime position to put the gun to my head. After a while, the truth did come out. It was a setup. The friendly guy was part of the scheme, and their whole plan was to steal my car and leave me there on the side of the road with nothing, in a rough part of town. Their plan obviously backfired completely, because the guy had apparently hesitated, which gave me time to take off. Also, come to find out, when I took off, he was still hanging on to my car, and then they shot at me and his friend with the gun, actually shot him. He survived. It wasn't that bad of a shot, thankful for him, but I'm pretty sure that they weren't very good friends after that. Of course, after all of this, I couldn't help but shake that feeling of betrayal. The guy seemed normal, decent, and we developed that quick, momentary friendship that you create with people. I ended up going back to the food delivery gig. It paid less, but there were fewer chances for things like this to happen. I'm not gonna lie, I do often think about that guy, and I wonder if he has any regrets about the choices he made that night. But mostly, I'm just grateful that I got out of there alive. A bit more cautious, a little less trusting, but alive. As I was walking home from work last night, about halfway to my house, a disheveled man who looked to be either homeless or extremely down on his luck crossed paths with me from the other side of the sidewalk. He had initially been walking in the opposite direction, but as soon as he saw me, he immediately turned around and started following me. He began rambling incoherently and aggressively, and his words were so slurred that I hardly understood a thing that he said. All I could make out was something about a care package and look at you. It was obvious this man was under the influence of multiple substances. I quickened my pace to try and avoid any eye contact with the man, and he was getting agitated that I wasn't paying attention to him. When my walking speed got too quick for his inebriated stumbling to keep up with, he stopped talking and instead began just trying to follow me. I kept looking over my shoulder at him, and every time I saw him, he would either stop or try to duck behind a bush. Finally, I started outright sprinting and looking for a spot that I could hide myself. I came up to my local mosque, and I tried to sneak around the corner into the parking lot of it, where there was a tree that I hid behind. While hiding there, I frantically dialed 911. I told them that a strange man displaying unstable behavior was trying to follow me, and I described my location, myself, and the man to them. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way to where I was, but while waiting for them, I saw a figure heading up the sidewalk in front of the parking lot that I was hiding in. Panic immediately filled me, until the passerby was close enough to where I could see that it was not the same man who had just bothered me, and they turned out to be harmless. Mere moments after this, the cops arrived to where I was, pulling up next to the tree and motioned for me to come out and talk to them. The officer driving the vehicle asked me the standard questions: a description of the incident, where I was when it happened, etc. While we were talking, he spotted a man in another parking lot down the street, not far from where I had my first encounter with the creep. He asked me if this was the man that I had encountered, and it was hard to tell between the darkness and the distance, but I was pretty sure that it was. Another police vehicle had pulled into that parking lot, and it appeared that an officer got out to talk to the man. The officer I had been talking to asked me how far I was from my house, and I told them that I was pretty close to my street at this point. He assured me that I should be safe to walk the rest of the way home, and that they had other cop cars patrolling the area. I thanked him and finished walking home without further incident, thank God. Shortly after I got home, I saw that I had a text from my boyfriend that read, "Are you okay?" The text had been sent at around the time the incident was occurring, as if he could sense that I was in a fearful situation. I replied back telling him what had happened. He told me that he had gotten yelled at by a homeless man earlier too. I described the creep that I encountered to him and asked him if he thought it was the same guy. He said that he didn't think so. We also had a brief phone call to make sure that each other were okay. I let him know that I was home safe, and he told me that he was in a vehicle with a group, so he was safe too. I don't know what the cops ended up doing about the man, but I hope that he stays as far away from me as possible. For this story, I, 31 female, was 15 when this started. I've alluded to it in comments on this sub, so I thought I would share the full story since I can't sleep and am an oversharing type of person. It started when I went to a movie at the indie theater in my hometown. We had two when I was growing up, both owned by the same people, but one theater featured major films/blockbusters, and the other did the film festival, well known kind of everywhere, and more indie movies. My French teacher gave an extra credit assignment to see Man on Wire, I think it was called, so I went with a friend to see it, though she wasn't in the class. When we went to the front, there was a very cute older guy that I recognized as a girl in our class's older brother. I think he was 22 to 23 at the time. He complimented me, and he offered to comp our tickets and gave me free popcorn and candy and whatnot, ignoring my much prettier friend. It felt nice to be noticed, so I accepted, obviously, and we enjoyed the free movie day. For a little backstory, again, the girl who was his younger sister, in my grade, used to be a friend of mine, and I had met him many times as a kid, but he was older enough that I don't think he recognized me at first. And at that age, I looked more like I was 19 or 20. The next couple of weeks, I saw him everywhere. Grocery store? Check. Outside of my school? Check. Walking home from Safeway? Check. Everywhere. But being 15 and him being cute and older, my dumbass thought it was flattering. So I went to the theater again and was with a different friend. Same thing. He gave me free popcorn, free tickets, etc. This friend already knew it had happened before because it was a major subject that I had a hot older man interested in me. We were so young and thought that it was so great. He came into the theater during the movie to bring me an extra candy and his number on the back of a receipt. I thought that it was so cute. He continued to show up everywhere over the next few months. At this point, I was halfway through 16, and I was at the same theater with the same friend that I was with the first time. He once complimented me, saying I was beautiful, asking if I had a boyfriend, if I liked to party. I said yes. He invited me to his house for a party that he said he was having. His address was very close to the house my friend I was with lived in, so I said yes, knowing if I had a sleepover with her we could go and I would get to go to my first party. I wasn't allowed out late, nor was I allowed to go to parties, if I'd even ever been invited to a high school party, so it was perfect. We went late so that we wouldn't seem lame, and as we walked up, we could see through the front lit window to where he was. It was an hour past, and it was just him, with several bottles of booze. We looked at each other and decided to walk back to her house. I still saw him a lot after, almost everywhere until I graduated high school and moved up north for college. I didn't go to that theater again until about a year ago. This happened when I was around the ages of 11 to 13. I'm 20 now, by the way. And we had it rough. Our family lived off of minimum wage. My dad was an alcoholic. My siblings were banned from our neighbors' houses because they were accused of stealing. One of our neighbors that lived right next to our house was a teacher. Let's call him A. He worked at our local high school. He lived with his wife, and let's call her B, and his 2 kids. We were friends with his kids, and occasionally spent afternoons at their house with our other friends. The husband had a brother that had mental problems caused by drug addiction, call him C, that lived just beside their house. Like a duplex, but with his door facing our fence and AB's door facing the road. There were times when we were watering our plants that C would come up to our fence and show his tongue as if he was trying to lick the air in front of me while making eye contact. We don't usually hang out at our garden because of this. If we had to go to A and B's house, either has to come out and watch us go in, so C won't touch us, especially me, because I was just so terrified of him. But still, this was our only house that we were welcome to when we were dumb little kids. One day I was coming home from school. As I unlocked our gate and went in, I saw C picking our doorknob with a flattened spoon. He ran when he saw me and climbed up the fence back to his house. To say that I was mortified was an understatement. I told his brother about it, but they did nothing. I thought that he was the only creep, and I also gave it that thought that maybe he was just really struggling with his mental state. A few months passed by and my dad was away. By the way, I did have 2 siblings, all of us were girls. So when my dad left for something, we were only females left. One night, I heard a discreet psst while I was filling our water containers. I ignored it, but then I heard it the second time. I looked around and saw that it was A calling me from the other side of our fence. He signaled that I should go outside because he was going to give me something. It was a 20 peso bill, rolled really tight. This was weird because when he handed me the bill, his other hand was inside of his shorts. It happened again after a few days, and this time he was wearing only a towel on his lower half, and his hand was, again, inside the towel, clearly doing something, because I could see his forearm moving. And this time I was really creeped out, and I went inside immediately. I never told my parents about this. I noticed that he was also calling my other sister, and I told her to stop going whenever he called, and she did. We never went to their house again. We transferred to the province after that. Since I attended the high school he was teaching at, and some of my friends are his students, I still heard stories. He was really into the female students, mostly sarcastic to males. Years after, it was discovered that he had inappropriate relations with some of his students. I don't know what happened after that, but I still haven't told my parents this story. So, the story started when I was 14, 17 now. I used to play in a park with my friends. I had a crush on a boy who was 14 as well, who used to play with us, and he too had a crush on me. And he had a friend who was older than him, 16 to 17 maybe. So, we all used to play together. I always saw my crush's friend as a brother, but his feelings for me were not appropriate. He liked me. So one day, on my birthday, he randomly approached me and told me that he loved me. I replied that I did not have the same feelings for him, and that I liked someone else. He did not take the no as an answer. Now, that's when the creepy part started. I recently joined Instagram and somehow he found my Insta ID and began messaging about how he loved me. I rejected him multiple times, but he just wouldn't stop, so I blocked him. Now, he started making multiple Insta accounts to stalk me, and messaged me from each one of them. And I kept blocking him. I was annoyed and enraged at this point and threatened him that I would report him to the cyber police. So, he took it up his ego, and kinda started following me at places. He would take the same route as mine, knew the timings about when I was going to the park, when I was going to buy groceries. So, whenever I went out of the house, he would creepily stare at me and would continue ogling until I was out of his sight. He wouldn't even budge his eyes for a second. When I used to play, I stopped playing with him, but he continuously roamed around me and stared. Now, I was scared to a point where I started hesitating to go out of the house. Whenever I saw him, my heart would drop, and I started hyperventilating. I thought that it was only me who found him creepy, but when my mom was like, "Who's that guy that always roams around you? He doesn't give me good vibes. Try to stay away from him," I was like, "Yep, he is bad." And you know that person is not very good if your mother's instincts sense something fishy. This went on for a whole 2 years, and his staring or messaging and stalking from fake accounts didn't stop. He even went to the extent to manipulate a friend of mine and my crush, whom I started dating, and trying to tell them that I was a slut. We didn't break up, though. That's when I had had enough and decided to take action. I went straight up to that bastard, and I slapped him right in his face. Still, to this day, whenever I hear his name or see his picture, I get a panic attack, and my hands and legs start shaking in fear. And, in fact, he was sexually attracted to one of my friends, and he asked her if he could see her chest, but she was too scared to do anything to him or tell any adults. So that, my friends, was this week's collection of Stalker and Stranger scary stories. Scary Stalker and Stranger stories. Scary stories. Stories. People, scary people. You get the fact. You get the point. Where is my brain? Where is my mind? Way out there in the water. I need to go listen to the Pixies. Anyways, so that was a collection of scary stranger stories, as you could tell. Creepy collection of stories where the scariest thing in the story, obviously, are the people standing right next to you. Or standing in the woods. Or sitting behind you in your car. You get the point. That's what I was wanting to say. Creepy encounters. That kind of stuff. Hopefully you all enjoyed these stories, and as always, hopefully they do have a sense of education about them. A sense of, if you find yourself in a situation like this, try to stay out of the situation, number one, and try to get out of it as best you can. Now, I know it's not always possible, but maybe these can be used as cautionary tales. It's hard to say. Hopefully you enjoyed the stories. If you did, please do hit the thumbs up button. That does help tremendously. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, please consider subscribing. That also helps quite a lot. And if you're feeling ever so bold, leave me a comment down below the video, letting me know how you're doing. I'm doing okay. Still having some vocal issues, or having new vocal issues. I don't know what to say anymore about that. Where my voice just feels weak. It feels like I'm straining to push it out. So I have a doctor's appointment next week, so I'm going to talk to my doctor about it. See what she recommends. Because I don't like straining my voice like this. I don't sound strained, I know, but it's confusing to explain. Just know that it's rough right now for some stupid reason, and we'll figure it out. We'll get to the bottom of it. Anyways, friends, oh yeah, sorry, there's also the Patreon memberships where you can get early access to content like this if you so choose. No expectation, always appreciated. Yeah. Anyways, hope you're all having a lovely day. I hope I do see you again here very soon, but until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Do not forget it, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And until next time, my beautiful friends, much love, and sleep well.